What is going on in London in particular?
Well, we've got a mayor who's largely asleep on the job. Remember that Sadiq Khan is the Police and Crime Commissioner for London. And under his watch, we've seen increase in violence against the person by about 11%. We've seen an increase in sexual violence, and we've seen an increase in muggings as well since he came to office in 2017. It's like he's been asleep on the job, that he hasn't paid attention to policing. And he's found it very difficult to motivate the police, largely because he implies that every police officer is racist or misogynist. And what he should be doing is actually supporting the police and improving the respect that Londoners have for those authorities.
Now, whenever we talk to London Labour politicians, they blame the Conservative national government. Whenever we talk to London Conservative politicians, they blame the Labour mayor. Yeah. How do we know who to trust here?
Well, you just have to look at history. If you look at the maximum number of police officers we had was under the previous mayor's term in office, and that has declined since the number of police officers declined since Sadiq Khan has been in office.
How is that the case? Because there's been this recruitment drive for 20,000 extra police, but...
Absolutely, and yet with the government has allocated the funds for an extra 4,500 police officers in London, but the mayor just doesn't seem to be able to turn the money that he's getting from the government, which is considerable, into actual action. Basically, this administration of his is incompetent and largely asleep.
And yet, this is a mayor who's been re-elected by the people of London by a considerable margin at the last election. Is there just not enough public understanding of what the role of the mayor is, what the powers of the mayor are?
Well, I think that Londoners need an alternative. They need somebody that they can vote for that is actually going to make things happen rather than just issue press releases. I think Londoners are now tired of Sadiq Khan. Even Labour politicians, when you take them to one side in quiet, you'll never get this on the record, will say how dissatisfied they are with the record of Sadiq Khan. So we need an alternative, and we're going to get that alternative. We'll have that chance in next year. To be able to replace the mayor, and it's inevitable he will be replaced. You cannot continue with a mayor like Sadiq Khan, who fails on almost every single metric, and still runs for re-election.
Now, you scrutinise him as a job. You sit, of course, on the London Assembly. Is it your indication that this is a mayor who's going to try and run for a third term?
He will run for a third term. I'm fairly convinced of that, unless he gets a better job somewhere else. And there is no better job than the Mayor of London. But yes, he certainly will run, and I believe he will fail.
It's interesting that this election is coming around so soon, next year, in fact. What's your indication in terms of who the Conservative candidate might be this time round?
Well, we're starting the process fairly soon. I mean, I want it to be me, but it could very well be somebody else. But it's got to be somebody that can speak for London, a London voice addressing London issues. Sometimes our campaigns in the past have had the National Conservative stamp on them, but they haven't really appealed to Londoners themselves. Londoners have a different view of the world. There are certain things that matter to Londoners more than that matters to the rest of the country, and we need a candidate who can articulate that.
Well, is this an exclusive here on GBNews, Andrew Boff? Are you throwing your hat into the ring to stand for that position here and now? Most definitely.